This is a spooky show with no particular niche, baby. It's always about hanging out. Ha 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 ha. Maybe we'll laugh at some stuff. Maybe we'll learn something new, but it's always about hanging out, me and you. Hi, hello, and welcome to That Thing with James, a spooky bi-weekly podcast about nothing in particular. I'm your host, James, and welcome back. Hi, I realize it is October, and that means Halloween has begun already. So, it's actually not October at the time of this recording. I'm recording this on Sunday, September 29th, but the mornings are already cool, and I feel so much better with the cool weather. The sun is oppressive. The heat has certainly been oppressive, but the sun, I can't take the sun anymore. It recoils. It makes me feel terrible. Yet when it's dark and cool now, I feel alert, awake, natural, free. What the hell has happened? I've got like the opposite SAD, SAD, seasonal affective disorder. The summers have been grueling before. I've been through many grueling summers, even doing a lot of manual labor in the grueling heat that could kill you. But this year in particular, it's not just that it's been giving me headaches and making me nauseous and stuff, but that's really made me depressed. So with the darker days and the cooler weather, I feel myself coming out of that pit, and as if a creature rising from the grave, undead, sitting in front of a microphone, alone in a room, in front of a camera, speaking to no one, but perhaps to someone, perhaps to you. Hello, hi, what's up? Welcome. So, I have some plans. I have plans for this episode. I'm going to read, depending on how much time we have. I'm aiming for about 30 minutes for this episode, 45 tops. I'm going to read some spooky folklore. Now, I went looking for some other stories, and they were not so easy to find. A lot of the kinds of things I was looking for is published in books. Now, they're folklore, so it's free. It's like, public domain stories. A lot of these stories existed long before the concept of copyright. But a lot of them, at least the kinds of ones, the international spooky folk tales that I was looking for are not so easy to find online, in about 30 minutes of research first thing in the morning while you're just taking your first sips of coffee, as I did today. So I did find some Irish folklore, so we've either got one or two stories, but I know for sure we're starting with the Banshee, the Bunworth Banshee. Now, before we get into it, I want you to know some information. This podcast has over 100 bonus episodes that you can get access to by becoming a patron at patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. That's right. patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. You can go there. $5 is the bare minimum entry, but it gets you 30 days of access to over 100 bonus episodes. Plenty of episode to keep you occupied for 30 days. If you like the sound of my voice, and if you like the shape of my skull, you might consider supporting the show. And to those of you who are already patrons, thank you so much. You rock. Once again, that's patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. You can find the link written in the episode description, as well as links to my social media and to the show's email, which I very rarely check because I very much got into the habit of not receiving emails for so long that I'll log in once every 6 months and be like, oh, fuck, someone sent me an email the day after the one time of the 2 times in the year that I check the email. Maybe. If you write a comment on YouTube, because this show's on YouTube, in case you didn't know, look up ThatThingWithJames, and my channel will pop up. And if you're not already subscribed, there you can subscribe and see all the videos, plus some other series I made a couple, 1 or 2 years ago, plus. Links to everything is written in the episode description, and on the video, it's appearing at the chyron at the bottom of the episode. So, yes, we have entered. We've officially entered fall. We have not yet had fall back. We haven't gained an hour of sleep yet, but we're officially in fall, and we're coming up to my favorite holiday of the year, which is Halloween. I hope I don't have any biscotti stuck in my teeth. Well, let's just get into this story. First, let me take a sip of water, and then we will get into The Banshee, written by no one's really sure. We're not entirely sure, but published sometime around 1844. Be right back, just a second. This article I found, or this story I found on this website called www.tota.world. That Tota, T-O-T-A. I don't know what that means. Tota.world is dedicated to sharing cultural knowledge and engaging experiences to create a more connected and respectful world. Hey, I can get behind that message. Excuse me. Oh yeah, I just remembered, man, if you're watching this on video, on the left side of the screen, over my right shoulder, sitting atop the back of the couch, there is a bowler hat, which I intended to wear, but it will not fit over the headband of my over-the-ear headphones that I wear while recording this show. Now, I tried using some Bluetooth, pods to put in my ear, but there was like a half to 1 second delay between what I'm saying and the playback audio that I was getting. And unfortunately, I guess that's just part of the nature of Bluetooth. And it would be extremely disorienting to do an entire podcast and hear myself a second later, a second delayed, as opposed to wearing, direct wire plug-in, which is immediate, playback in my ears. So, long story short, I wanted to wear the cool hat, but it won't fit over these headphones I'm wearing. And I don't want to not record without the headphones because I'm my own engineer. I'm my own audio and video engineer and editor and all this stuff. This is a one-man show. So, long story short, I want to wear the cool hat sitting over my right shoulder, but I'm choosing not to, because of technical stuff. Anyway, irrelevant, not germane to The Banshee. Now, there's a note at the start of this story from Tota.world. It says, note, this article has been excerpted from a larger work in the public domain and shared here due to its historical value. It may contain outdated ideas and language that do not reflect Tota's opinions and beliefs. End of note. Is this going to be an offensive Banshee story? I don't know. Who knows? Let's get into it. The story is called The Banshee, from Fairy Legends and Traditions of the South of Ireland by Thomas Crofton Croker, published in 1844. Let's get into it. Cue thunder sound. The Reverend Charles Bunworth was rector of Butavant in the county of Cork about the middle of the last century. He was a man of unaffected piety and of sound learning, pure in heart and benevolent in intention. By the rich he was respected, and by the poor beloved. Nor did a difference of creed prevent their looking up to the minister, so was Mr. Bunworth called by them, in matters of difficulty and in seasons of distress, confident of receiving from him the advice and assistance that a father would afford to his children. He was the friend and the benefactor of the surrounding country. To him, from the neighboring town of Newmarket, came both Curran and Yelverton for advice and instruction, previous to their entrance at Dublin College. Young, indigent, and inexperienced, these afterwards eminent men received from him, in addition to the advice they sought, pecuniary aid, and the brilliant career which was theirs justified the discrimination of the giver. I'm not sure what any of those words mean together. Well, let's keep going, and I hope I pronounce these Irish words right. But what extended the fame of Mr. Bunworth far beyond the limits of the parishes adjacent to his own, or is it adjacent, was his performance on the Irish harp, and his hospitable reputation and entertainment of the poor harpers who traveled from house to house about the country. Grateful to their patron, these itinerant minstrels sang his praises to the tingling accompaniment of their harps, invoking in return for his bounty abundant blessings on his white head, and celebrating in their rude verses the blooming charms of his daughters, Elizabeth and Mary. Blooming charms of his daughters? My. It was all these poor fellows could do, but who can doubt that their gratitude was sincere when, at the time of Mr. Bunworth's death, no less than 15 harps were deposited in the loft of his granary, bequeathed to him by the last members of a race which was now ceased to exist. Trifling, no doubt, in intrinsic value were these relics, yet there is something in gifts of the heart that merits preservation, and it is to be regretted that, when he died, these harps were broken up one after the other, and used as firewood by an ignorant follower of the family who, on a removal to Cork for a temporary change of scene, was left in charge of the house. The circumstances attending the death of Mr. Bunworth may be doubted by some, but there are still living credible witnesses who declare their authenticity and who can be produced to attest most, if not all, of the following particulars. Ooh, I love it. These 1800 stories, they tell it as if it's wordy. It's very wordy, but it's told in a way as if you are a reporter. These tall tales. It was a big thing in the 1800s. You tell the story as if it's real, as if you're a journalist reporting these strange but true circumstances. Let's continue. About a week previous to his dissolution, and early in the evening, a noise was heard at the hall door resembling the shearing of sheep, but at the time no particular attention was paid to it. It was nearly 11 o'clock the same night when Kavanagh, the herdsman, returned from Mallow, whither he had been sent in the afternoon for some medicine, and was observed by Miss Bunworth, to whom he delivered the parcel, to be much agitated. At this time, it must be observed, her father was by no means considered in danger. What is the matter, Kavanagh? Asked Miss Bunworth, but the poor fellow, with a bewildered look, only uttered, "The master, miss, the master, he is going from us." And overcome with real grief, he burst into a flood of tears. Miss Bunworth, who was a woman of strong nerve, inquired if anything he had learned in Mallow induced him to suppose that her father was worse. "No, miss," said Kavanagh, "it was not in Mallow." "Kavanagh," said Miss Bunworth, with that with that stateliness of manner for which she is said to have been remarkable. I fear you have been drinking, which I must say I did not expect at such a time as the present, when it was your duty to have kept you sober. I thought you might have been trusted. What should we have done if you had broken the medicine bottle or lost it? For the doctor said it was the greatest consequence that your master should take the medicine tonight. But I will speak to you in the morning, when you are in a fitter state to understand what I say. Kavanaugh looked up with a stupidity of aspect which did not serve to remove the impression of his being drunk, as his eyes appeared heavy and dull after the flood of tears. But his voice was not that of an intoxicated person. "Miss," he said, "as I hope to receive mercy hereafter, neither bit nor sup has passed my lips since I left this house, but the master—" "Speak softly," said Miss Bunsworth. "He sleeps, and is going on as well as we could expect." "Praise be to God for that, anyway," replied Kavanaugh. "But oh, miss, he is going from us surely. We will lose him. The master, we will lose him. We will lose him." And he wrung his hands together. "What is it you mean, Kavanaugh?" asked Miss Bunsworth. Is it mean?" said Kavanaugh. "The banshee has come for him, miss, and 'tis not I alone who have heard it." "'Tis idle superstition," said Miss Bunsworth. "Maybe so," replied Kavanaugh, as if the words idle superstition only sounded upon his ears without reaching his mind. "Maybe so," he continued. "But as I came through the glen of Ballybeg, she was along with me, keening and screeching and clapping her hands by my side every step of the way, with her long white hair falling about her shoulders, and I could hear her repeat the master's name every now and then, as plain as ever I heard it. When I came to the old abbey, she parted from me there, and turned into the pigeon field next to the barren ground, and folding her cloak about her, down she sat under the tree that was struck by the lightning, and began keening so bitterly that it went through one's heart to hear it." "Kavanaugh," said Miss Bunsworth, who had, however, listened attentively to this remarkable relation, "my father is, I believe, better, and I hope will soon himself be up and able to convince you that all this is but your own fancy. Nevertheless, I charge you not to mention what you have told me, for there is no occasion to frighten your fellow servants with the story." Mr. Bunworth gradually declined, but nothing in Mr. Bunworth gradually declined, but nothing particular occurred until the night previous to his death. That night, both his daughters, exhausted with continued attendance and watching, were prevailed upon to seek some response, and an elderly lady, a near relative and friend of the family, remained by the bedside of their father. The old gentleman then lay in the parlor, where he had been in the morning removed at his own request, fancying the change would afford him relief, and the head of his bed was placed close to the window. In a room adjoining sat some male friends, and, as usual on occasions of illness, in the kitchen Moni of the followers of the family had assembled. The night was serene and moonlit. The sick man slept, and nothing broke the stillness of their melancholy watch, when the little party in the room adjoining the parlor, the door of which stood open, was suddenly roused by a sound at the window near the bed. A rose tree grew outside the window so close as to touch the glass. This was forced aside with some noise, and a low moaning was heard, accompanied by the clapping of hands, as if of a female in deep affliction. It seemed as if the sound proceeded from a person holding her mouth close to the window. The lady who sat by the bedside of Mr. Bunworth went into the adjoining room, and in a tone of alarm inquired of the gentlemen there if they had heard the banshee. Skeptical of supernatural appearances, two of them rose hastily and went out to discover the cause of these sounds, which they had also distinctly heard. They walked all around the house, examining every spot of ground, particularly near the window from whence the voice had proceeded. The bed of earth beneath, in which the rose tree was planted, had been recently dug, and the print of a footstep, if the tree had been forced aside by a mortal hand, would have inevitably remained. But they could perceive no such impression, and an unbroken stillness reigned without. Hoping to dispel the mystery, they continued their search anxiously along the road, from the straightness of which and the lightness of the night they were enabled to see some distance around them. But all was silent and deserted, and they returned surprised and disappointed. How much more, then, were they astonished at learning that the whole time of their absence, those who remained within the house had heard the moaning and the clapping of hands even louder and more distinct than before they had gone out. And no sooner was the door of the room closed on them than they again heard the same mournful sounds. Every succeeding hour the sick man became worse, and as the first glimpse of the morning appeared, Mr. Bunworth expired. That's the end of that story. And I gotta say, who wrote this? Thomas Crofton Croker. Dude, you're not a good writer. This was not good writing. I'm gonna say it flat out. This could have been a better story. One, it's whatever. It's whatever. The story itself is fine, but the way he told it kind of sucked. I'm going to write a letter to this guy's ghost and say, do better, okay? So that's that. I've got another story lined up here, Red Mary. I've not read this one yet. Let me take a quick sip of water, and we will get into the tale of Red Mary. Be right back. And we're back. This one is on emeraldisle.ie. Red Mary. This is part of Irish and Celtic myths and legends, Irish folklore and Irish fairy tales, and Irish ghost stories. Also, by the way, fairies in Irish folklore are not cutesy Tinkerbell things. Fairies are a race that grew up alongside humans. They're shapeshifters. They are to be, I'm going to be careful with this word, feared. You can be scared of them, but they are to be respected and not fucked with. If you fuck with them, they will fuck your life up. They're shapeshifters. The fey folk, the fairy folk are way more kind of, for lack of a better term, they're scary. To make it really, really simple and reduced, they're scary in Irish folklore. But I don't know if this story involves the fey folk, but this is Red Mary. Marry in haste, repent at leisure. There once, and again, there's some Irish words and names in here. Hopefully I pronounce them right. If I don't, live with it. Here we go. There once was a woman called Mary Rua, or Red Mary, since she was one of the McMahons and had hair like a fiery sunset with a temper to match. Many legends have grown up around this 17th century force of nature, some true, some maybe less so, and some she spread herself. She made her seat in Lemanagh Castle in the Burren County, in the Burren in County Clare, and her first husband was arranged to be the Colonel Daniel Nayland, an English officer, but he perished young in the wars with Spain, leaving her with 3 children and large estates. After she married her cousin, Conor O'Brien of Lemanagh, by whom she had no less than 8 children. He was not a man given to accepting the yoke of English rule lightly. Fuck yeah. So he financed and fought alongside rebel companies, stealing sheep, cattle, swine, and other goods from English settlers, generally giving them a hard time whenever he could. Fuck yeah, Connor O'Brien. Yeah, like Colomini. He built 2 great gates to command the road into and out of the Burren, but none could pass except they were granted leave by himself and his wife. But one of the Burren men gathered a force and, breaking the gates, made O'Brien swear free right of way forever. Those who came up on the wrong side of his blade held that his good fortunes in battle were due to his wife's witchcraft, and it would seem nobody could stop him. But his luck ran out when he joined the armies of King Charles II, dying the death of a hero after a battle against Edmund Ludlow. He made his way home to his castle, and people say that Red Mary thought him dead, crying out to his servants. And this is another one where the writing is a little choppy, so I'm getting a little lost. Forgive me. He made his way home to his castle, and people say that Red Mary thought him dead, crying out to his servants with neither a tear nor a wail, "What do I want with the dead men here?" But when she spied he was alive, she nursed him on his deathbed until he passed away. Then she adorned herself in the most magnificent silk and lace and went straight to Limerick, which was under siege at that time. And I've been to Limerick, by the way. When she made it to the outer ring of soldiers, she was stopped by a sentry and screeched until the officers emerged from a tent where they were eating their dinners. She then told them, "I was Connor O'Brien's wife yesterday and his widow today." "He fought us yesterday," they replied. "How can you prove he is dead?" "I'll marry any of your officers that asks me," she answered. Well, one Captain Cooper, a man of uncommon courage, took her up on her offer, and they were married shortly afterwards, by which means she saved her estate from Cromwell's depredations. Little benefit did he gain from the arrangement, however, for he spoke ill of her former husband one morning, and she killed him stone dead with a swift kick to the fork. What is the fork? A kick to the fork? I don't know. The head? Did she kick him in the head? Was it a roundhouse? Did she go Van Damme on him? 23 more of Cromwell's... Holy shit. 23 more of Cromwell's finest did she marry after that, and not a one came to a good end, marrying all the later ones for a year and a day. One fellow was thrown out a window, while she challenged another to ride her wild, but completely blind stallion off. I thought it was going to be just ride her wild, period. She challenged another to ride her wild but completely blind stallion to the cliffs of Moher. So fierce was this beast that there were special niches built into his stone enclosure where people could hide if he heard them passing. She quarreled with the Protestant clergy and had her own private church built to spite them. And tales even tell her temper was so fierce that she could make a male servant that should a male servant displease her, he was hung by the neck. And if a female hung by the hair from the corbels on the old Peel Tower after being mutilated. What the this went to 100 real fast. What, she's mutilating people? More tales are told about Red Mary than she had children, but strangest of all are the stories about how she met her end. Some say she was sealed into a hollow tree to starve. Others say a tree opened up and swallowed her for her wickedness, while yet others say that she was flung from a horse into the forked branch of a tree where she choked or hung by her own hair. But most eerie of all, her shade is said to stalk the ruins of the old castle yet, accompanied by evil laughter and screams of her supposed victims. Whether her final resting place was in a tree near to her beloved castle or close to the old druid's altar, the former is marked on the map below. Okay, there's a map. Okay. Let me see. I'm going to find one more story. I'm fucking disappointed. I should have read ahead. Damn it. I'm going to try to find one more story here, see if it's any better. Give me one moment. All right, here's one more. Let's see how this one goes. A sad tale of love lost. Little remains of once proud Dunluce Castle. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Dunluce. Little remains of once proud Dunluce Castle, whose halls had echoed with the sounds of laughter and music, and whose vaulted arches had defied the most ferocious storms. Only echoes and shadows are left behind, and some day the tormented ghost of a young lady waiting for her lover to return. The castle had originally been built by Richard Og de Burgh on the 13th century, but shortly afterwards it passed to the McQuillan clan, who turned it into a mighty fortress and became known as the Lords of the Root. The de Burghs weren't finished with it yet, though, and Richard Og was after the hand of Lord McQuillan's daughter, Maeve Rua. Red Maeve? Huh. She wasn't taken with him, though, and had secretly given her heart to a young man called Reginald O'Can. Her father was angry with her defiance and locked her up in the dank and gloomy northeast turret of the keep, but every day and night she watched by the window of her prison, waiting for her rescue from her love. And come he did under the cover of night, and a storm which blinded the guards to his little boat. Reginald made his way with stealth up to her cell and released her, and they escaped amid howling winds and driving rain into a sea cave among the rocks below Dunluce, pushing out the little boat for freedom and portrush. But alas, the boat was no match for the wild seas, being tossed hither and yon without mercy, until eventually the white fangs of the ocean turned the boat over, and it was shattered against the rocks. Maeve and Reginald held one another as the boat sank into the cold depths of the sea, from where Maeve's body was never recovered. And now they say her spirit haunts the ruined northeast tower of Dunluce Castle, especially on stormy nights when sorrowful wails and moans can be heard echoing amid the thunder as Maeve awaits her rescue still. More haunted stuff to check out. Oh boy. Well, I've got some more scary stories, real scary stories, lined up for this week's bonus episode. So if you want to catch that, head on over to patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames. And thanks for tuning in for this episode. Catch you next time. Bye.